Hi. Uh, I used this LED light in the previous live, but since then it somehow broke. And now the blue light doesn't work. So I am stuck with this green light. I usually like a dark blue light, but it doesn't really work anymore, so it only comes out with red. Either red or green. Does it look like stripy on your side? Hi. It kind of looks stripy on my screen. If it's too stripy, if it's too distracting, I will turn it off. I literally only have green. That is so bright. Hi everyone, where is everyone tuning in from? Oh, is the red okay? Like for real? I kind of feel like it's a bit too, like... That's really too bright. Why is it so stripy? I don't get it. I'm just gonna turn it off. It's a bit distracting for me. Hi from Malaysia. Hi. That means you're like in the same time zone as me, right? Finland, wow. That's definitely not the same time zone as me. Wow. Oh, okay. What do you miss about Singapore? Yeah, I don't really have major plans for this live. Um, I know I used to do lives a lot more frequently, but I've been focusing a lot more on like doing videos and learning new software. I've been editing on a new software. I don't know whether anyone has noticed, but I've been trying out new things in terms of like my editing and like the way that I usually do my videos. So I hope that's like coming across on my channel. Yeah, I'm still like figuring out exactly like a rhythm that I'm more comfortable with, or like a set of rules of how I would do stuff on this channel, but I might not do lives as often in the future because I might have some changes to my schedule that might make me a lot more busy. So I might actually have to do like a quick hiatus on this channel sometime soon, but nothing is confirmed yet. Yeah, which is why I'm trying to film as many videos as I can in February and get them out to you all before like other commitments catch on in my life. East Coast is really nice. I admit that. East Coast can get really crowded though sometimes. Like especially on the weekends and on the public holidays, like everyone is at East Coast. Oh, hi from the UK. UK is literally like the opposite time zone, right? So it would be morning. I do use a Kindle, but not as much anymore because now I read from my iPad, and it's a lot easier to take notes on my iPad. Like, it's a lot easier to transfer stuff from my iPad to other places. So I used to use like a paperback Kindle a lot more often, just for long distance reading. But nowadays I read on my iPad. Yeah, Mumbai is pretty chaotic. I mean, I've never really been, but from, as in, from, I guess like generally, I've always heard that it's always so crowded. Hi. Hi, oh my god. Haven't seen you in a while. My chess stream was pretty far, like it was pretty long ago. I kind of feel like I forgot all the rules already. I'm like the type of person that learns a game for like the first time and then forget it and then relearn it. That happened to me with like solitaire and then with mahjong and then I think with chess. I'm just not good at remembering all these rules. Um, but I think it's fun to learn things again. Although the chess thing, I played at such a slow speed that it was mildly enjoyable, but I feel like if I actually had to do it in a more pressurizing environment, then I would totally fail at playing chess. I can see why people are so. I can see why people might like why people might fall in love with chess though. Like, it is quite soothing once you know the rules and everything. Yeah. So actually, I did mention in the title that this might be like a read along live. So if you have books that you want to read, go ahead and read them. I'm not gonna stop you from reading them. I recently just got two books from the library and they're both by Amitav Ghosh. And I talk about him a lot on my channel, honestly. And this is like super new. So I'm very excited to read this. And because everyone keeps saying that he's such a great fiction writer, I also borrowed his novel um, to see how it's like. Yeah, there's a couple of books I think really mulling on about, and I kind of feel like I'm at the precipice of having multiple breakthroughs. And I think last year, which is how I think a lot of people know about my channel, I had a couple of videos that were just sit down and talk videos about slow living and having ambition. So recently, there was a local journalistic website. I don't know what they call it, like a local media website that reached out to me. They're called Rice Media, and they publish a lot of stories locally here in Singapore. So one of their journalists reached out to me and wanted to talk to me about like the video that I made on ambition. And even until today, it's like the video that garners the most views on my channel, even after almost an entire year. And I kind of understand why, and I've been wanting to address those videos for the longest time, but I never had the chance to do so. And I do want to formally address those things in like a proper sit down and talk video about like ways to move forward from that way of thinking. But I just thought I would talk a little bit more about it with everyone today as well. Like, so the journalist actually talked to me about the ambition video, and I think it's been a long while since I've reviewed my older content. Um, I still stand by most of the things I said in those videos, but I do know that those videos were more of an abnormal video for me, because I don't usually criticize things. Like, don't really like complaining outwardly. I think those videos were pretty rare in that I was basically complaining the whole video, but people resonated with that. I think I just said it in a nicer way than people would have said it. Yeah, okay, I don't really have any formed thoughts about it, but I just wanted to say that like I am planning on kind of addressing that whole like I lack ambition and lack this drive to excel in like a capitalistic society sort of thing. I do wanna do a follow-up video to that, so that's my intention. And it's crazy that even a year after, people still find the video so relevant to them, and that it was republished again in an article, that people still wanted to seek my thoughts on something that I published like a year ago. So that was really interesting. Yeah. Okay. Oh, what's this? Go? Is Go like a similar game to chess? I don't know. Would I do a read of an excerpt from The Weight of Our Sky by Hannah Alcott? So yeah, I did talk about the book in my most recent video, and I have it with me here actually. Yeah, The Weight of Our Sky by Hannah Alcott. Let me see if there's an excerpt that I really like. I feel like there's so many that was so good. I really don't annotate my books, so I struggle with times like this. I don't really like annotating my books because I kind of feel like that like marks the book such that when I reread it, it just changes the way that I reread it. Okay, I don't know whether I should. Well, I think I like the scene where there was some music that was playing, and I think, let's see. Oh, I'm so bad at this. Oh no, wait. Give me like just one more minute. I can find it, I swear. I think I remember it was like at the end of a chapter. Oh, this one. I think it's at the end of chapter 8. So it's at the end of chapter 8, and this is when Melati is revealing to Vincent that she does this like tapping ritual to stay in control. So there's this part. Let me just read it. the thing about a song is that if you break it down, it's all chaos, I say. Like there's all these different notes, different instruments, different sounds. It's a mess. But you add a beat and a rhythm and somehow everything can come together and make something beautiful. I think that's what I'm trying to do. Find a rhythm for the mess in my head so that it somehow makes sense. Oh wow, thanks for the super chat. That was super that was super sudden. Wait, and I realized that my audio is not even. Wait, I've been putting in AirPods without even realizing that it's not even attached to the computer. Guys, what am I doing? Huh? Where is my output? Look at me struggling with technology. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Ooh. Ah, forget it. I'm not gonna use the audio. Sorry, I'm not done with the excerpt. So, okay. Where somehow everything can come together and make something beautiful. I think that's what I'm trying to do, find a rhythm for the mess in my head so that it somehow makes sense. I steal another glance at him. He's looking straight ahead as he drives, frowning a little. I can tell he's thinking about everything I've told him. The silence stretches on, and I can feel that familiar flutter. The gin opens up his palms and releases 1,000 tiny blackbirds, all flapping their wings frantically against the walls of my stomach. He thinks you're crazy. He thinks you're crazy. He thinks you're crazy. My palms start to sweat, and before I realize it, my fingers have worked their way back onto my lap and are moving as if they have minds of their own. I close my eyes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. My mind stutters to a stop. I open my eyes. Vincent has reached over and taken my hand firmly in his, lacing our fingers together so mine can no longer tap out that endless refrain. No boy has ever held my hand before. Before I can say a word, he starts to sing a familiar song. Little darling, he calls me, his voice cracking on the unaccustomed high notes. Little darling, and my heart begins to melt. He's not very good and I want to laugh, even though I can feel tears pooling in my eyes. Don't cry, stupid. I tell myself firmly, don't cry. So instead I sing along and our voices soar and blend together as we tell ourselves over and over again what we so desperately want to believe. Here comes the sun. And I thought this was like one of the best excerpts that I read in The Weight of Our Sky. So I talked about this in my previous video, and this book is a YA set in like in the 1960s in Kuala Lumpur. So it's about like the racial riots, and Melati is like a Malay girl. She's only 16, and Vincent is this like Chinese boy that she kind of comes across in this whole period of time where like the mother of Vincent has very kindly protected Melati against like some of the people that are like violent in the streets. And although it can be read as like a romantic scene, I'm not reading it as a romantic scene in the scene where like Melati reveals to Vincent that she has this tapping ritual that she uses to like kind of quell the negative thoughts in her head, and that instead of the way that other people have responded to her, which is to usually kind of judge her and to like she was so ready to be judged and so ready to be casted as crazy, but he uses what she already has like told him, that like, oh, music helps me quieten the negative thoughts, like music helps me make sense of this chaos, and he recognizes that, and he actually like takes the action to like help her in a way that he knew helped her, which I thought it was such a great scene to include, because there's just so many characters that just didn't understand like her condition or were unable to treat her as like a peer, and this scene really showed me that it is very possible to extend kindness in so many different ways, and even a small act of like turning up the radio and just like holding one person's hand can have such a huge impact on the way that someone feels safe and someone can feel like they can be themselves. So I thought this scene was so important in the entire novel. And I don't think it's anything like a love, I don't think it's a romantic or like love scene in any way, but it was a very heartfelt moment of acceptance that I thought the main character really deserved. So that's why I really enjoyed that scene specifically out of the entire novel. So yes, thank you for asking me that question, because I really really loved reading that part. Yeah. Hi. Okay, now I can catch up on the chat. So I hope that was a good response to your question about The Weight of Our Sky. What am I reading lately? So I spent the last weekend reading all those novels that I wanted to recommend to you all, because I wanted to make sure that the novels were good. And lately I started on this. So I started on like the first chapter, and this book kind of follows the story of the nutmeg. I don't know whether you all know about the history of the nutmeg, because I'm just learning about it. And it's the story of how like the nutmeg is a spice that has been in circulation for like the longest time. So the residents of the Banda Islands, which are situated in Indonesia, they've been trading spices for a long time, but everything changed when the Dutch kind of came in and brutally kind of massacred their way in. So yeah, and then that kind of traced the beginning of the whole imperialist conquest, and how that still impacts a lot of people today in terms of like the way that we see ourselves like in modern society. And I have always like I'm in tough conscious writing, so I'm excited for this. Yeah. Does spending time on the internet affect your ability to focus on tough new things, and how do you deal with that? Oh my god, for real, yes. Definitely yes. I feel like in the beginning, I was really trying to keep up on Bookstagram a lot more than Booktube. And that's mostly because on Booktube it is still a pretty underdeveloped scene, in a way that the types of users and viewers that you have on YouTube are very niche. Like it's mostly young women from America that are watching Booktube videos, and so the most common genres that are the most popular are normally say like romance, fiction, YA, fantasy. Even for adult novels, it's like a lot of contemporary novels. So for Booktube, I felt like I had a lot more liberty to do things my own way, because I didn't really feel the pressure to cater to that audience, because I didn't relate to that audience. However, on Bookstagram, I felt like the audience was a lot more involved, like the community was a lot more involved, and there was a lot more pressure to have a reading journey that was similar to the people in your circle somewhat. Like I felt pressured to be reading the same things that bookish people in Singapore were reading, but that was also very much shaped by, what bookstores were promoting, and what, like a lot of what publishers, like indie publishers, were also trying to get local readers to read. And that felt a lot more pressurizing for me, and I felt like I had to churn out all these reviews, even though I enjoyed reading the books and taking photos. I just felt like it didn't flow in a way that I liked, in a way that I wanted to read books regardless of like societal pressure, and I wanted to form my own opinions on the books without having to feel like I had to share them in such a tight time frame. And I think a lot of you know that when publishers send you books, they kind of want you to review their books within a certain time frame. And because of this, I've started to be a lot more like reluctant to review books, unless they're like really from a publisher that I really want to support. Yeah, so but nowadays I try not to accept too many books to be reviewed, because I know a lot of people still don't consider like booktube reviews to be a good enough review. They do want people to post about them online on various social medias and all that, and tag them, etc., in exchange for like sending you advanced reading copies. So that was a huge thing that I had to grapple. Was like, yes, I do want to read these books like in advance and to like keep up with the trends, like whatever books were published in 2021, I wanted to read them by 2021. But then I realized that there's just so many books published every single year. There were all these books that I wanted to read that were published in 2017 or even like 2010 and even 2000. And if I was just reading all the books that were published in 2021, there was no way I was able to even read like anything that was published prior to 2000, you know. That was the biggest challenge for me. Yeah, like figuring out exactly like naturally what kind of books I would want to read instead of having to grapple with like what the trendy books were and what people wanted me to read. Yeah. How do I deal with that? I basically do not check Bookstagram as much anymore. So if any of you have messaged me on Instagram, I'm so sorry. I don't really check Instagram anymore. So that has been a huge reduce in pressure for me. Other than that, I just try to keep to my own reading preferences. So I would go to the library often, or I would like make sure I pay enough attention to the books already on my bookshelf. And I always try to do a lot of my own self-reflection and figure out what gaps I have in my own reading that I want to like follow up on. Yeah. My opinion regarding the legality of Singapore presidential campaigning. I don't really have an opinion on that. I kind of feel like I don't know enough to say that it's better to have a longer campaigning period. I mean, a lot of these things are kind of subtle, right? Politicians can still indirectly appeal through other ways outside of the campaigning period, and it's always a constant negotiation to win brownie points with everyone, regardless of the actual campaigning period or not, because I don't really think the literal campaigning affects people's opinions as much as the overall performance of like the different candidates and their parties over the years. So that's like a whole 5-year period before the next election. I think that affects people's voting more than just the 11 days of campaigning. So that's my opinion. Hi Brian. I don't think, wait, have I ever seen you like in real life? I don't know, I don't remember. Which is the last book you read that you almost immediately felt like reading over again? Great question. I think it'll be this one. Let me bring it out for you. It'll be this book, Warmth by Daniel Sharrow. Yeah, it's a memoir, but it's the very first memoir that I read that is about climate anxiety. So I think that matters a lot to me because climate anxiety is a relatively new thing that is very hard to express. But I felt like Cheryl was very, very articulate in that. Like he was really able to capture this very vulnerable feeling of climate anxiety and existential angst and all that, in a way that had very hopeful moments in between. So I feel like this is something I would want to read again in this year. Yeah. And it's about like, okay, look at the subtitle, coming of age and the end of our world. That's how I feel right now. Completed the audiobook for Crying in the H Mart. Wow. I heard it was really, really, really sad. Yeah, I haven't actually read the book, so I don't know whether, like, why I would have recommended it. Because I know that it has really stellar reviews. Yeah, but I heard it's super emotional for so many people. Have I read Pachinko? Pachinko? Yes, I have. I read it a couple years back, like maybe 4 years back, 3 or 4 years back. I've read it. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It was really sad. I remember it being really sad. If I'm not wrong. Have I read Dune? And what do I think of it? I have not read Dune. Dune is like fantasy, right? Sci-fi? I'm really bad at reading sci-fi and fantasy. I think the only sci-fi I've ever read was like Parable of the Soul. The Girl and the Ghost is very good too. Thank you for the recommendation. I will check out other books. I feel like, yeah, The Weight of Our Sky is really good. If it isn't too revealing, can you tell us what you studied in university? I studied anthropology with a minor in psychology. I almost became a psychology major because when I was like younger, I thought I would become a neuroscientist because I was really good in chemistry. Like I was really good at chemistry and I was semi alright at biology, so I thought I would do something science related. So I pursued psychology and I didn't do too badly in the discipline. But I realized that I preferred something a lot more qualitative and I preferred something that dealt with human behaviors in a way that considered a lot of their cultural nuances, and that led me to anthropology. Have I read any Haruki Murakami books? If so, do you recommend? Uh, I have read Norwegian Wood. Yeah, I think that's the most. And I read it a long time back. I read it like I don't know, like 6 years ago. I thought it was not bad. I can see why a lot of people felt like his writing was very enchanting. Yeah, I wasn't so struck by it though. I can see why people would be fans of his writing, but I wasn't very amazed or impressed by it. I just thought like, okay, that's an interesting story. Have I read Rice Bowl by Suchan Kristen Lim? No, I've not read it. That sounds really interesting. I feel like I've seen the cover somewhere. Let me go see it. Rice Bowl. Rice Bowl. Suchan Christian Lim. Oh, that's interesting. I've never read it before. I've never seen that before. Oh, interesting. Do I know any other good Singaporean novels? Let me try and pick out a few for you. I have some on my shelf. Let's see. Uh, okay, scratch that. I don't actually have a lot of good novels. I really liked After the Inquiry by Jolene Tan, and I liked The Minorities by Sufyan Hakim as well. Yes, Sufyan Hakim, I really enjoy his books. I feel like his writing is so entertaining, but so like heartwarming. I feel like it's such a good, feel good type of story. The way that he writes his novels. Novel Ravikant. I have heard of his book. This person. Something finance, something something. I've seen like YouTubers break down the book by Novel Ravikant. Ravikant? Yeah. How often do I listen to audiobooks? Depends. It really depends. I find it really hard to finish audiobooks. The last time I finished an audiobook was when I read when it was like a bell hooks book. Wait. I think it was We Should All Be Feminists. Yeah. No, bell hooks. Feminism's for Everybody. That was the last book I listened to as an audiobook, and that was like a few months back. Other than that, I just kind of dip in and out of audiobooks, but I never really finished them, unfortunately. I find it really hard to concentrate on an audiobook. Yeah. Oh, the Insta DM about a book review. Was it by Coco? I think I saw it. I will reply you tomorrow. Thanks for like considering me though. Do I know Bilibili? No. Wait, sort of. I've heard about it. It's a Chinese video platform, right? Murakami. 1Q84. Is that how you pronounce it? I know that story is about like a boy, right? That's as far as I know. I know that nowadays Murakami's like books are still published. Like, oh, his books on like his writing on like running, his writing on like other things. Like a whole bunch of non-fiction essays are being published by him. That's really interesting to me. Oh, like I said just now, like I actually am reading this book, Amitav Ghosh, The Nutmeg's Curse. Yeah. This is what I'm reading right now. Oh. Let me go check on Agent P. You want to say hi to everyone? You go. Hi. Oh, bye. Thanks for joining. She's really sleepy because like we spent the day at a friend's house and she was really active trying to figure everything out. So she's really sleepy now. Thanks for watching stuff on my channel. Random YouTube suggestion. Nowadays my videos are not really recommended as much. Like looking at the analytics, I feel like more like my videos just aren't reaching as many people, but I think that's pretty normal. That's very common. And I realized that with making stuff online, it's really sporadic and it's very easy to feel very affected by the performance online, because I feel like having performing online is really different from offline performance, because in offline performance I feel like there's greater space to have qualitative metrics, like how people respond to you in real time, how people feel around you, things like that. Whereas online, it's all metrics, it's all numbers. So even though individually each piece of content could have had a great kind of intangible effect on people, that would never really be captured, because people assume that that kind of effect will be captured in the amounts of likes, the length of the video being watched, in the number of shares and saves. But I feel like that's not really the case, but that's how the platform works. So it's true that nowadays my videos don't get as much traction. I know a lot of people are not being recommended my videos, so I'm glad that it got recommended to you anyway. Thanks for the well wishes, El Kel. Yeah, Asian P is a great name for a cat. My friend actually named her because my friend was fostering Asian P when she was a kitten. So she's named Asian P because she likes to snoop around. Fellow Anthro graduate, yay! What were my favorite topics and modules? So actually, a lot of Anthro students in my school ended up in Anthro because a lot of us were interested in gender and sexuality, and because we didn't have a gender and sexuality major or even a minor studies, a lot of us ended up in Anthro where we could actually explicitly study things through a gender or sexuality lens. So that was what I was interested in. Like I was interested in a lot of like feminism starting out. But eventually I got really interested in like youth cultures. And I did my senior thesis on like dance, like street dance in Singapore. So that's something that was pretty close to my heart. I guess for me, I was always very interested in listening to people craft their own meanings about things in their life. That's what drew me the most to Anthro as well. Yeah, my favorite topics, it really varies. Yeah, it really varies. I think there were a lot of different ones I did. Yeah, I really do that Anthro. I do think that Anthro does encourage a lot of critical thinking. And what's that book called? There was a book called Gods of the Upper Air. Let me go and find it. So there's this book by Charles King, Gods of the Upper Air: How a Circle of Renegade anthropologists reinvented race, sex, and gender in the 20th century. And it's basically like this whole like biography of the cultural thinkers in anthropology, you know, talking about the story of Franz Boas, Ruth Benedict, Margaret Mead, and all these big names in anthropology. So if you study anthropology, you would definitely know these names. And I just thought it was such a great biography. So if any of you are interested in anthropology, like the history of anthropology, do check out this book. It's called Gods of the Upper Air. I did talk about it in one of my videos before, but I haven't really mentioned it again. I love the book so much, maybe because I'm biased, but it really talked about how these anthropologists were first kind of commissioned to study tribal groups and study like cultural differences so that the colonial powers could better conquest these tribes. Like knowledge was power, and so these anthropologists were first dispatched to get insider knowledge on how to like manage these different people. But in the end, what these anthropologists realized was that these tribal people or people of different cultures were not primitive in any way. Like, they were not lesser in any way, but rather all their differences made sense to them in a way that our own world made sense to us. And so from there, that's why so many people of marginal identities did so well in anthropology, because anthropology was basically like the study of differences in a way that kind of had to see all these differences on an equal level. Like, you couldn't have biases if you wanted to study these things objectively in a way. Of course, everything in anthropology is subjective, but if you wanted to have some sense of objectivity, then you had to acknowledge how everyone's viewpoint was valid to some degree. And that's why, like, these anthropologists at the end of the day realized that we couldn't propagate a whole society based on discrimination against people just because of the way they look or the way that they behave. And I think it was just so amazing that you could get a sense of the way that these anthropologists thought, because they were doing this kind of work. You know, like, naturally, as you study people from different backgrounds, you would kind of very naturally start to understand that diversity is a strength, you know. And it's not just like a liberal thing to say or a progressive thing to say, but it's really true that only by really understanding that diversity is a fact of life in human life, then you can really start to like understand people more, and to really like gain further insight or wisdom into how societies work. So yeah. Sorry, I just went on a rant, like a ramble about anthropology. It's been so long since I last did an anthro course, and I really do miss taking classes because it was just so much discussion and so much intellectual openness, like, that anthropology gave me, that I didn't really see in a lot of other disciplines. So I miss that a lot. What philosophy work are you into? I am not into any specific kind of philosophy work. If you are looking for like technical terminologies, I do not adhere to any specific philosophical thought. Yeah. But what strand of thought I am currently on is post-growth living. How do we envision a world of abundance that is not based on perpetual growth? Yeah, so that's the strand of thought I'm currently on, and I'm trying to read as much about it as I can. Yes. Wow, okay. Currently reading For Brown Girls with Sharp Edges and Tender Hearts by P. Rodriguez. I've never heard of that, so... Interesting book. What is it about? Oh my god, thanks for the compliment, Hadzik. Hadzik, is that how I pronounce it? I'm not the coolest person on this island. Sorry to burst your bubble, I'm not really that cool. Okay, planning to buy a Kindle device, which one would you recommend? I really don't know much about the different Kindle devices available now. Yeah, I don't think I can help you on that recommendation. Personally, I like the ones that have like the paper... Is it called a paperback one? But the one that's not like a digital screen, but the one that is kind of black and white. Yeah, I think those are easier on the eyes at least. Rationality by Steven Pinker. Don't know who that is. Oh my god, thanks. That's so nice of you. That's so... Why? Okay, thank you. This is a very cute sticker. It says cool. The guy's just like shaking his head like this. Because of you, I started reading again. Oh my god, really? That's like the highest compliment ever. Thank you so much. I am so happy. For myself, I am just more than happy to share these books because I only really share books that I feel deserve a bigger audience. So I'm so glad that if any of you pick up books because of my videos, that is mission accomplished. That sounds what that okay. I found a lot of ethnographies, research papers seem to reveal more about the authors than their own research participants. Yes, I did a whole year of doing this. Like my paper was a year-long process, and it was such a huge struggle, honestly, because so much of anthropology is like self-reflective and self-reflexive. If you know all these terms, you're a true anthro student. But so much about anthropology was like a constant like discussion with yourself and like with your participants and the environment, and choosing what you want to say with it. I remember someone did mention that anthropology is like academic storytelling. I think it's so true to some extent that that anthropology, what I really like about it, about ethnography and all that, is that it's ground up research, and it really paved the way for authors to be directly involved in the research, because we don't see a lot of science disciplines doing that. I remember I did a module on animal behavior before. This is when I was into neurobiology, by the way. So I did a whole module on animal behavior and genetics and all that. And there was this one paper that we had to study that was about understanding how butterflies could navigate their migration patterns. Like how did butterflies, like by what mechanism did butterflies like figure out their migration patterns. And so there was a hypothesis that the butterflies did it via magnetic fields. So they would use their antenna and figure out exactly where they were pointing towards, and then use it to kind of navigate their direction. So they did that, but then subsequently people were unable to replicate their study. So I think you all know this, but in order for a finding to be valid, it has to be replicable. That means people had to replicate it in different settings, like in different areas with the same settings, and they should yield the same results. Therefore, you know that the hypothesis is proven true. But this experiment couldn't be replicated, and people couldn't understand why. And so afterwards, with a lot of like back and forth studying and everything, people realized, and the scientists realized, that the colors of the lab coats affected the way that the butterflies navigated their surroundings. I'm not sure whether it's just butterflies. Maybe it's some other insect, but it was an insect. And it was because the butterflies navigated their surroundings by, I think, more of a color perception rather than a magnetic field perception. Yeah. And so it's so crazy, because afterwards the paper was amended with the correction that because of the researchers' lab coat color, the findings were affected. But, you know, in the whole history of scientific findings, oftentimes scientists see themselves as like wholly objective. Like they don't see themselves in the experiment. But everyone knows that even when you run a psychology experiment, a clinical trial, like you know there are all these other factors that affect the way that people react to things, or like that the way that the results are obtained. It all affects the ultimate result. Yeah, so that's why I think there's no true objective research that you can conduct in this world. You can get close to it, but there's no true objective research, even in the scientific field. What we can do is to try and mitigate it by being aware of our own subjective biases. I feel like that's the most that we can do, rather than trying to assert a true objective stance. Yeah. Do you think humans will look back at non-vegan consumption with horror? Good question. That's actually a really great question. I've been thinking a lot about that actually. Because let me just tell you, let me just read an excerpt for you from this book. So this is Post-Growth Living by Kate Soper, I can't pronounce that. And let me just try to find the yeah, so let me just read the last paragraph for you. Okay, the move to sustainable consumption may also require, I also recognize how controversial this will sound, a more courageous challenge to the political incorrectness of excessive and nonchalant consumers. It is still very difficult to criticize the environmental squandering involved in people's consumption habits, and there is much embarrassment all around if one does. But given the damaging climatic impact of first world affluence on other more deprived areas of the globe and on all future generations, it is not clear why wasteful and polluting forms of personal consumption should remain exempt from the kinds of criticism that we now expect to be brought against racist, sexist, or blatantly undemocratic attitudes and behavior. The commitment to an alternative politics of prosperity based on a sustainable economic order needs to be seen as a continuation of the emancipatory project. Yeah, so I think that is exactly what I feel like that would be the answer to your comment. And when I read this, I had a shift in my thinking, which is so true that even in today's world, like if like someone at the same table was eating steak and I criticize that person for eating steak, like beef, in a time where, you know, the meat industry is just so polluting, I still will be the one that's more heavily criticized than a person eating steak, right? Because yeah, you're like being the party pooper, you are not being the gracious one. Like one person is not gonna affect anything. But when I read this excerpt, I realized that's kind of like the same way that people must have thought in the past, right? If you were at a table and someone made a misogynistic remark, people will let it slide because the bigger problem was all these policies that hindered women from voting or women from entering the workforce. But we all know now that all these incidences add up. It's because we allow misogyny to happen on such a low level, like it's such an everyday level, that it escalates into like places of policy and places of like actual importance. And we all know this because we all know like the effect of locker room talk, for example, right? Like if dudes come together and they make misogynistic remarks and they get get away with it, and not just that, they are enabled to do it because being more misogynistic in certain like men only spaces actually affords them more privilege and more power, and that kind of becomes the formula for all the people that start to climb the ladder. And before we know it, it's just so impossible to remove this inherent sexism within the system. And so when I read this excerpt from the book, it made me realize like, am I allowing people to get away too easily? Am I allowing myself to get away too easily? Am I allowing like personal responsibility to be invisible in a way that that we become even more helpless? And we'll talk about this more in the video about post-growth living, and that we have to claim back personal action in a way that leads to collective action rather than to keep using the same excuse of like corporations handle everything. Yes, to some extent they do, but we are also responsible for our own spheres of influence. You know, if we are not holding ourselves and like the 5 to 20 people around us accountable, then there's no way that us as a whole can keep ourselves accountable as a collective to kind of shift bigger powers. And I think that's a very recent insight that I have lately. Like that's a really, really very recent kind of light bulb moment for myself. Because it feels very futile to get like my immediate friends and family to eat more of a plant-based diet. But I feel like if I allow myself to do this, And if we all allow ourselves to do this, then that's worse than not doing anything at all. Yeah. There's a crisis of replication in the field of psychology. Yes, exactly. I agree. In psychology, there are a lot of things that just cannot be replicated, and that's the fact of human behavior, so I'm not too surprised. See it in class issues too, attributing systemic economic issues to people like Bezos and Musk. Yeah, I know I've been seeing a lot of these like I don't know, like I for one like don't think that we should not criticize big names. I feel like, oh yes, like if we want to criticize Jeff Bezos, we should. But what really matters now is like that we don't, for example, like for people who are like middle class or lower middle class, it's not to feel hostility towards working class. And for the working class to also kind of not see each other as competition. And that honestly, I don't know, I feel like my stance towards corporations and institutions, at least for myself, I don't see myself being able to find solutions through change in institutions and major corporations. That's where I stand today, and I struggle a lot with that because those are the players that have the biggest stake in everyone's lives. And I struggle a lot with that because it feels so impossible to change a structure. Yeah. But I do think it takes a lot of different efforts from all fronts. So we need people to be marching into these places and demanding change with those systems, but we also need people to be on all fronts, like outside, inside, all actively try to build something different. Because I once wrote an essay on the prompt by I think it was by Bell Hooks, about how you can never use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. Let me try and find the quote. Yeah. Oh, by Audre Lorde. I'm so sorry. So, it's an essay by Audre Lorde called "The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House," and it's basically about like how you can never really achieve true emancipation through like within the system. Of course, when I wrote the essay based on this prompt, I don't remember what I argued in the end. Let me see. Yeah, so basically Audre Lorde argues that like you can never really use the traditional forms of power to achieve social justice and equality. And that you're never able to bring genuine change just by using institutional power alone. And I don't know exactly yet, but that's really the pathway that a lot of people take in Singapore, because it is kind of difficult and sometimes often illegal to go by any other route here. So most people will try to use the master's tool to somehow change the gears within the master's house, and people live with that change. Like people live with that as much as possible, and I can understand that. I think that's a completely valid way, because we cannot really expect radical change in a lot of societies, and that's completely alright. But yeah, I also believe that you can never really truly dismantle structural inequalities just by like within the structure alone. Oh, the Rodriguez book is titled as a love letter to women of color. Ooh, that's so interesting. Thank you for that recommendation. Let me go and keep that in mind. Yeah, plant-based, I kind of feel like I had this really funny conversation with my parents one day, because my parents aren't the most happy with me being so vocal on the internet. If anyone had the impression that my parents were very actively supporting me on my content, they are kind of just silent about it, which is how I think a lot of Asian parents are with regards to their own children's careers. Like, if it's unconventional, they just kind of keep quiet about it. So, anyway, we had this conversation once where they were telling me like why was I being so vocal about certain things, and why was I trying to make them change their actions as much as possible. Like, why was I trying to encourage them to eat less meat as much as possible? Shouldn't I be going out and trying to like do bigger things, like work in the ministry or like work with organizations and all that? And I told them, well, everyone has to start with something. Everyone has to start from their friends and family, and that is a form of activism as well. I know there's like a Chinese saying that like all good starts from home, right? I forgot the exact idiom, but yes. So I do think that small moments of influence do matter a lot, especially if all of us do that, because we cannot ever underestimate collective action as well. Yeah, the thought interesting. Should excessive consumption under capitalism be treated like sexism and racism is? Economies aren't ready for a cultural shift like that. It is likely inevitable. Yes, I agree. I do think it is inevitable that we have to move towards a post-growth economy. It is definitely inevitable that we have to grapple with less work and less employment, because we need less things, because society, like the environment, the degradation of the environment will lead to massive curbs on production, right? And that will have massive curbs on consumption as well. Like, you have massive curbs on consumption because of environmental costs, and also because of cultural shifts, and that leads to a lot less work in general, because majority of our work today is not really productive work. It's not like work that needs basic necessities. A lot of our work today is about creating excess. So once you take away the excess, a lot of our work is gone. A lot of our modern ideals are gone, like things like productivity, hustle culture, materialism. All these things will be gone very quickly and in a very unavoidable way. So it's either the material circumstances changes now, as it changes first before we can get to it, or we claim it as our own now. And I feel that that would give us more power in the future, because it is also very likely that if we are still stuck in this kind of consumer mindset, we're still stuck in this consumer identity, that can be used to our detriment in the future, where things become a lot more resource scarce, and consumers and just workers in general are at a disadvantage, because then the ideals are still very tied to current capitalistic forms that major corporations can just transform into a more like insidious form of capitalism. Like, if you cannot capitalize on environmental resources, then it would be searching for other things to capitalize on, and commodify, and we'll see even more like severe forms of like commodification and things like that, which I don't think is anything that anyone wants to see. I don't think that's what we deserve as people, and I don't think we should accept this commodification of like everything in our lives. Like, there's just so many things that shouldn't be commodified, and I just wish we shouldn't have to commodify all of that. Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to focus on the larger things I'm powerless to change, rather than risk myself putting out there locally. Yes, I agree. I think that's a lot of the struggle that I feel as well. MIT study that said something similar to that. The accumulated ecological damage will end up in large productivity reduction. Yeah, I sincerely believe that like unemployment or like underemployment will be a lot more common. And it's gonna suck for a lot of people. I feel like now we're still so tied to the idea of employment being like the reason for existence. You know, like for me going to school, everything was about preparing me for work. And work was meant to be it, you know. But that's not sustainable in so many ways. And that's why I'm learning so much about work and its relation to the environment, and its relation to the economy and all that. I think it's crazy. I think where we are today, I mean, for me, I just think it's very instinctive. Like, if it sucks for so many people on the ground, like going to work every day and seeing this huge dissonance with their work and how the climate is, I think it sucks. I mean, just really, like, honestly, emotionally, it just sucks. I don't know how to articulate it better than that. Yeah. Wow, okay, I've been talking so much. I thought it'd be a pretty chill life. I guess a lot of you have a lot of questions for me, so thanks for asking all these questions. I've been thinking about a lot of these things a lot lately. Yeah. And I know a lot of you miss like my video essays. I hope to bring them back soon. But I'm not trying to rush myself. I do think that like I'm not in a rush to get anywhere. And I don't want to like rush myself for the sake of rushing myself. Yeah. Slowly working on a few. Yeah. Period of unemployment, a bit after college, yeah. Yeah, why?
You why? Nice streaming.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's still sleeping. She's very tired. HP is still sleeping. Yeah, for myself, I've been self-employed for a pretty long time now. For like a year, I think. Yeah, so it's weird because I talked a little bit about this in my ambition video, but I think a lot of people had expectations for me. But my first employment experience, like full-time employment experience, was so traumatic. I just kept thinking to myself, like, it just gave me a huge realization. And actually the book that is it the book that I talked a little bit about here, Warmth, Daniel Sherrill, like he actually talked a little bit more about this way of like the difference between realization and knowing. And I think I had a lot of realizations in the past year. Like we know things are bad. Like we can know that our work sucks, or we can know that the climate is going to like, and we can know that the climate is degrading. We know that it's deteriorating. We know that there's so many things out there, but we don't realize it. I think for me, like the year of 2020 was a lot of realizations, and like the earlier half of 2021 was so many realizations that people had such deep-rooted ideas of worth and of value. Yeah, not just that, but so many realizations of what it meant to be like a young person today in the midst of all this. Yeah. And being unemployed was being unemployed is still like one of the best things in my life that made me really grateful. It made me a lot more aware of the way that people might think of me, but it also made me a lot more empowered to do things my own way. Like, I would talk to people and they would be so bugged by all these people's expectations. Like, for example, having to settle down with someone, to get a house, to have a certain stable job, to have a future planned out, like 10-year plans or 20-year plans. And people stayed even when they were unhappy because they had all these obligations, or they were just so afraid of change. Yeah. Yeah, and I thought to myself, a lot of it was also fueled by my climate anxiety. I thought to myself, like, if the world was really gonna be so bad by 2040, how would I have wanted to spend my 20s? How would I have wanted to learn about the world? When else can I be able to dedicate this much time to reading the things that I like to read about, to shaping my opinions in a way that I felt were my own? Like, when else can I do that? I didn't want to wait until I was 30 or 40, and by then my opinions would have been so ingrained, and I didn't want to wait until I was like so jaded. I want to get out of the system before I knew the jadedness would set in or the complacency would set in. Like, I wanted to get out before that so that I could like brace myself for all of it. And I wanted to really build my armor against all of that cynicism. And it took me at least like half a year to get out of that trauma of that whole employment period. I mean, it was nothing bad about the place. I think I was just so stunned by the mentality that people had while working in their jobs. I think that was something that just stuck to me until now. Like, this helplessness and this sense of inevitability, this sense of dreading every morning. Yeah, I just didn't like that feeling at all. Yeah. Honestly, I'm not making money. And I'm actually still seeking full-time employment for this year. So 2021 I gave myself the bandwidth to do whatever gigs kept me afloat. But in 2022 I will consider full-time employment. Okay, investing is great, but I don't really trust crypto. Be careful about crypto because it is kind of, yeah. Wow, thank you. Did you already donate something just now? Why are you just telling you all the stickers now? Like, there's this cat. Purple cat. That's so cute. Wait. What? Wow, invent things with math. That's so fun. That's so, yeah. I'm glad for you. I'm happy for you. That sounds fun. I've never been good at math, but yeah. I was good at everything but math. Why? That's so weird. Uh, now really talking about crypto here. So fun. It sounds fun. Math. Yeah, I really don't. From what I know, crypto is kind of sus. Yeah. What music do I like? I like a whole range of music. I listen to a lot of like 88 Rising music. Recently, Warren Hill and Rich Brian had a whole like live with Dingo. I really like that. Wow, you got a patent for your algorithm? That's so cool. Wow. Other types of music I listen to. I've been listening to a lot of like it really depends, like R&B, mostly R&B. Let me see. Oh, like Yeji. Do you know Yeji? She's like Korean American. She does a lot of like house music. Listen to a lot of her music. I listen to a whole bunch, but lately what I have on repeat is like Mark, NCT Mark, his latest solo song called Child. I've been playing that a lot. But other than that, yeah, lots of house beats, random people, 88 Rising people, yeah. Ooh. Okay, guys, I think I have to go because I kind of spent the whole day out with Asian P today, and I think I have to go and feed her and get her ready for bed, but also me. Recently, the flat above us has been doing a lot of renovations, so I have been unable to get any peace of mind during the day. So I'm gonna go and spend the rest of the evening relaxing and enjoying the night. So thanks everyone for spending time with me today. Yeah, and for sticking with me. I know this live was like super random and super spontaneous. Yeah. Okay, I hope you all enjoy the future videos I'm preparing, and the usual spiel. Please take care. please drink lots of water. Make sure you get enough rest. And thank you all for chatting with me in the stream. I honestly didn't expect a lot of you to be online at this time, but a lot of you are. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Whew, cool. Okay, I'm gonna go finally. Yes, thank you for all the questions and all the discussions. It has been super interesting. I really thought I'm just gonna sit down and read a book, but y'all really came through with all the questions, so awesome. Yeah. Oh my god. Thanks for all the stickers and all the donations. That's so nice of you. Yes, everyone stay safe, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for joining me.